Hello, everybody. My name is Karryshh, and welcome back to another recap video. Today, it's our latest Thai horror movie, The Cursed Land. Now, this one was kinda really long. It goes with a really slow pace as well, so I will be eliminating everything useless from the movie. I actually believe you will enjoy the recap more than the movie itself. Although there is one notable thing to mention, which is that this movie blurs the line between two religion. Like if you wonder if spirits have religion or not, so this movie tries to answer that, which was fun. On top of that, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. It is free for you and it's something that helps me out immensely. And with that said, sit back and relax as I recap The Cursed Land. So the story kicks off with a flashback scene where a guy named Karryshh, a worker, was running away from people who were trying to catch him. He ends up in this open field where out of nowhere, evil head starts emerging from the ground. But before he can figure out what's happening, Karryshh gets surrounded. Turns out the people chasing him was actually his own companions. That's when Karryshh pulls out a strange tiny wooden artifact, and the moment his companions sees the object, they all start screaming in fear. The scene then cuts abruptly and we're taken to the present day, where in a small village, a man named Mit is moving in with his daughter May. Mit's wife had recently died in an accident and they still had her ashes with them. The two of them were moving into this huge old mansion cause Mit's mental health had been a mess since his wife's death, and his company transferred him here to give him a change of scenery. The house was super old and neither Mitch nor May really want to stay there, but they don't have much of a choice. The guy showing him around explains that the entire village is a Muslim community, but Mitch and May were not Muslims. Now after this, Mitch and May tries to adjust to this new place, and while looking around the house, Mitch notices these weird Muslim talismans hanging above every door. And we also find out that they have a dog with them, and its name was Bo. But one of the workers warns Mitch that they should not let the dog live outside, cause the locals here doesn't like dogs very much. Now while they're unpacking, Mitch was exhausted, and then out of nowhere, a gate starts slamming shut over and over again with the wind. Mitch goes to close it, but suddenly he gets a sharp pain in his head, and for some reason he gets convinced that it was because of those talismans, so he goes around the house and takes them all down. Seeing that, May was not happy, cause she thinks that messing with stuff like this is a bad idea. After this, Mit notices a guy in the garden and his name was Heem. And the moment Heem appears, their dog starts acting super weird, which was really strange. Then their dog goes around and finds a dead bird lying in the garden, and all this weirdness starts making Mit believe that maybe the people in the area are a little bit off. The next morning, the whole house was echoing with Muslim prayers, and after that, one of the doors randomly swings open and then shuts on its own, making Mitch up. He goes downstairs to grab some water and spots a group of Muslim women walking by the house. Honestly, Mitch just wasn't feeling great about living in this community, and he was starting to feel like the people around him wouldn't be very welcoming to this family. That night, as Mitch tries to go back to sleep, but we see that his shadow was still standing. The next day, Mitch heads to work early, and he works for a Japanese company, but even before starting work, he gets this splitting headache. He ends up calling a friend to complain about how the meds he's taken aren't working anymore, and clearly, Mit's mental health is deteriorating, and on top of that, he's been taking all kinds of random sketchy medications. Meanwhile, back at the house, May ends up in a storeroom where there's an old bird cage sitting there. Now, she doesn't pay much attention to it right now, but it was something important in this movie. After that, May heads to school, and on the way, she stops at this Muslim shop. She was really happy to see food from Muslim religion there, but that's also where she runs into him. Just seeing him there makes her feel uneasy, and that's when another girl named Ya shows up. Yaa buys some flatbreads for May and starts chatting with her. The two girls hit it off pretty quickly because it turns out both of them were going to same school. May explains why she moved to this town, and Ya tells her to just be herself and not worry about anything. Even though this place is totally different from what May is used to, Ya assures her that everyone here will look out for her. Meanwhile, Mitch asks his Japanese boss, Asano, how long he'll need to stay here. Asano tells him that he'll be here as long as it takes for him to fully recover mentally. Then Mitch notices that Heem works at the same company, which only makes him hate this place even more. Back at the house, paranormal things keeps happening when the house was empty, and to make things work, the family's dog Bo ends up dead. When Mitch gets home that day, he finds May crying over Bo's body. Obviously, both of them were heartbroken, but Mitch was convinced that one of the neighbors must have poisoned the dog, even though that's not what actually happened. Mitch starts digging a hole to bury Bo, but after a while, May suggests that they should take Bo to a temple for proper cremation, but Mitch refuses because he hasn't been back to a temple since his wife died. It was actually too much for him, so he buries Bo in the garden himself. Afterwards, their neighbor Zainab shows up to visit. He brings some food for Mitch and tells him that he should get his house blessed. When Mitch asks why, Zainab doesn't really explain. During their conversation, Mitch asks Zainab about the animals in the village, but Zainab gets nervous and tells him that people around here don't keep pets, but once again he doesn't explain the reason why. Now when Mitch goes inside the house, he throws away the food Zainab brought, which really upsets May. Mitch then tries to explain to May that someone must have poisoned their dog, but hearing her dad talk like this makes May more worried about his mental state. Later that night, Mitch's wife's sister, Pin, shows up at the house. She's there to take May with her back to the city. This really makes Mitch upset and he gets angry, but while they're arguing, Pin's son finds the birdcage in the house. No one knows how the birdcage got out of the storeroom, but suddenly Mitch hears loud banging sounds coming from the floor above. He rushes upstairs to check, but here was the thing. The noises were only audible to him, and no one else was hearing them. Meanwhile, May wants to go back to the city with her aunt Pin, but she can't bring herself to leave her dad, especially after seeing his mental state. Pin ends up leaving without May, but around the same time, Mitch spots Heem near the house's entrance doing something shady. Mitch runs after him, but Heem runs away. Now when Mitch checks, he finds this strange incantation drawn on his fence, clearly something Heem left behind. Mitch immediately erases it, and now he was even more suspicious about Heem. The next day, May tries to convince her dad to go see a real doctor, but Mitch brushes her off. She also tells him to stop taking random, unprescribed medications, but their conversation gets interrupted when Mitch suddenly pulls over because he had spotted Heem at a nearby shop. Mitch goes straight to talk to Heem and he demands to know what he was doing at their house last night, but Heem dodges his questions, refusing to give a straight answer. Then Heem casually mentions that Mitch's dog is dead, which sends Mitch over the edge, and he's now certain that Heem has something to do with Bo's death. Things here quickly escalate and now the two nearly get into a full-blown fight before Zainab came and breaks the fight. Zainab calms Mitch down and tells him to just let it go. He also mentions that Heem is mentally unstable and dabbles in black magic, so Mitch shouldn't take anything he says seriously. Then that day at work, Mitch's headache gets worse, and over at college, May can't focus on her studies either. As evening falls, Mitch decides to follow Heem, trying to catch him doing something shady, but he finds nothing he can use against him. Frustrated, Mitch goes back home and takes more of his random medication. Then suddenly, loud noises start coming from the upper floor again. When Mitch goes to check upstairs, he sees their dog, Bo, but something was horribly wrong. The dog looks demonic, and suddenly he attacks him. Mitch falls to the ground, tumbling down the stairs, and May rushes over to check on her dad. Now when Mitch tells her that he just saw Bo, May gets even more worried about her dad's mental state. The next day, Mit's condition worsened and a strange wound appears on his leg and the pain was unbearable. They begs him to go see a doctor again, but Mit refuses because he was unwilling to admit that there's anything wrong with him mentally. The scene shifts to him, where Zainab pays him a visit. Zainab tells him to stop bothering the newcomers, and after that, Zainab leaves, but we follow him to his house. Him's house was kinda strange, and he was watching the real possession tapes, as well as in his drawer, we spots those talismans, the same ones Mit had removed and thrown out of his house. It was clear that he has some kind of connection to that house, or maybe he knows something about its demonic presence. Later, May gets a call from her dad, who tells her that he'll be late coming home that night. But while they were talking, Mitch suddenly hears his wife's voice on the phone. This terrifies him and he again gets a splitting headache. He panics and rushes back home, thinking something bad has happened to May. But when he arrives home and starts to look for May frantically, May hears her dad's voice from her room. Now, after a while, Mitch ends up near a pond where he sees 4 Muslim women sitting by the water. He approaches them, but as soon as he gets close, the woman stands up and they have no faces. Suddenly, they transform into black birds and dashes away. Terrified, Mitch stumbles and falls into the pond where May comes to save him. The next day, we get to see different angles of the house, but their house was seemingly filled with spirits. Now, it was possible that these spirits are clearly messing with Mick's mind, driving him deeper into his deteriorating state. Later, May and Mitch head to Zainab's house for a ceremony. On their way, Mitch was disturbed by the sight of a buffalo being slaughtered near the house. And then at the ceremony, May joins her friends while Mitch sits with other men. As they eat, the pain in Mitch's wounded leg worsens, but he bears the pain and curiously asks someone about him. Here we find out that he once went towards south for further studies, but apparently he learned black magic there. After that, when he came back, he has been acting strange and no one ever trusts him anymore. Now after this, Mitch's leg wound starts bleeding and he begins feeling dizzy. In his mind, he suddenly gets convinced that everyone around him is laughing at him, mocking him, though none of it was real. Overwhelmed and terrified, Mitch panics and runs away. May sees her dad and follows him, and when she catches up, Mitch stops and starts yelling. He tells her that he had cursed their house and shows her the wound on his leg as proof. But to May, there's nothing there. No wound, no blood, nothing. Everything Mitch sees is just in his head. Now everything about her dad frustrates May and she snaps at him, saying that if he doesn't go to a doctor, she'll leave and go live with her aunt. She won't stay and watch him lose his mind. Then she storms off, leaving Mitch behind, but he was there and he watched everything that just happened. That evening, Mitch apologizes to May and she tells him that she'll bring a monk to cleanse the house of black magic. But after that, he has to agree to see a doctor, and reluctantly, Mitch finally agrees. The next day, May shows up with an entire group of monks. They perform a blessing ritual on the haunted house and set up a holy shrine in the garden, claiming that the shrine will ward off the evil spirits. They also bless both May and Mitch during the ceremony, and while digging a hole to set up the shrine, they uncover a small dagger. It was the same wooden object we saw at the start of the movie, and May decides to keep it. However, as the ritual comes to an end, one of the monks senses a strong dark presence inside the house, and whatever it was, it seemed to be lingering close to Mitch. That night, strange things starts happening again, and a dark smoke appears near the shrine in the garden, and Mitch suddenly wakes up, only to see an ominous, shadowy figure appear in the dim light of his lamp. The scene cuts here, and a few hours later, we see Mitch's factory is on fire. Now, after the flames are extinguished and things settle down, Mitch's Japanese boss approaches him. The boss was furious, and we find out that Mitch has been drinking on work, and that's why he was fired that day. But even after all that, Mitch couldn't remember when and how he was drinking at work. Meanwhile, May finds out from a monk that there are some sinister forces in her house, so evil that in fact the monk can't get rid of him. Shortly after this, May hears that someone in the village has committed unalivement, and she finds out from her friend Ya that the person who committed unalivement is from the family who used to live in her house. The village was also buzzing with rumors, and people were talking about some kind of curse that has been unleashed. May asks Ya if anything bad ever happened in their house before, but according to Ya, the house was always been normal. Now here Ya reveals things about jinns. Jinns are actually the entities from Islamic folklore. Ya explains that some jinns are good and some are bad, and she suggests that whatever is in May's house, she should talk about that to him, cause maybe he's the only one who might be able to handle that. Now just then, another chaos was unleashed in the village as one more body was discovered. Someone else has committed unalivement, and this only grows the fear among the villagers. Everything happening in the village completely overwhelms May as she decides to confront him about this. May goes to Heem's house and she bluntly asks if Heem has been practicing black magic, but Heem denies it. Heem tells her that he was only trying to help her family, and now he explains that Mit threw away some important items from the house that were meant to contain the spirits. On top of that, the shrine they built in the garden only made the entities angrier. He warns her that the curse, which was tied to the house, has now spread to the entire village and people are dying because of it. He gives May a piece of advice that she should leave the house before something even worse happens. And terrified, May rushes back home. Inside, she finds blood pooling on the floor, dripping from the ceiling above. She hurries upstairs and finds Mitch. He was sitting on his bed, puncturing his own leg, trying to pull something out of it, even though there's clearly nothing inside his leg. May immediately stops her dad and tries to get him out of the house, but the door won't budge. Luckily, Heem shows up just in time and helps them both. He gets the two into his car and takes off, explaining that he knows someone down south who might be able to help. On the way, Mitch regains consciousness and of course, he doesn't want anything to do with him, but May calms him down and she reminds him that they have no other choice but to trust him right now, and Mitch agrees to go with him thinking that his daughter trusts him. During the ride, he explains more about jinns. He tells them that good jinns help protect a house and its owner, while bad jinns exist solely to destroy humans. According to him, the shrine in the garden is what triggered the curse to break loose, and now only one person can put an end to it. The next day, the three of them arrive in a small village in the south. He gives Mitch some walking supports before introducing them to his friend Salim. Together, the four of them trek deep into the woods. By evening, they reach a small hut where an elderly woman lives, a witch doctor named Zainab. Now from Zainab, they learn that she was the one who originally cast the spell to keep the curse inside the house and protect the entire village. But now Zainab finds out that the curse has been unleashed again and she was left completely shaken. Heem explains that Mit and May need her help, but at first, Zainab refuses, saying that now she's retired. Obviously, May requests her deeply and Zainab finally agrees to help. She explains that Mit's problem aren't just about jinns, he's also struggling with his own mind. Suddenly, the fire in the stove flares up and a jinn completely possesses Mit. He immediately turns demonic and the jinn inside him starts speaking, and the jinn accuses Mit of killing his own wife. In that intense scene, Heem and May quickly hold on to Mit as Zainab performs a spell, grabbing Mit's forehead and forcing the jinn out of his body, sending it flying into the jungle. Now if you're wondering, Mit actually didn't kill his wife, but he believes that her death was somehow his fault and the jinns were taking advantage of that. The scene from here shifts to the past, where now we finally get to learn the tragic story of that cursed house and the land around. In the past, we see Karryshh, who was actually a slave. His master used to torture him along with other slaves. Karryshh had many fellow workers, and when they worked, their hands would get hurt, and Karryshh always wanted to return home. And we also meet his friend Mud, who took care of him. One day, the master learns that Karryshh is a black magician and that Mud is his disciple. This was actually true, because Karryshh used dark magic to help his fellow slave. One night, a spirit possessed one of Karrysh's friends, and Karryshh performed an exorcism on him while the master's men were keeping an eye on him. Late that night, Karryshh and Mud were talking, and Mud expressed his desire to keep working on this land because the master provides food, drink, and shelter. But Karryshh wants to kill the entire master's family because they're all ruthless, and that's when the two of them starts arguing. Their career goals were completely different, and soon after that, their argument turns into a fight. The next day, Mud goes to the master and betrays Karryshh, telling him that Karryshh is planning to escape. When Karryshh hears this, he runs away. And this is where the scene we saw at the beginning of the movie begins. Karryshh keeps running all day, but in the end, he was cornered. He then pulls out the dagger and summons a demon named Iblis, hoping to curse the entire land. Karryshh prays to the demon and casts a curse on the land, affecting everyone who lives on it. However, soon they catch Karryshh, beat him unconscious, but as soon as he regains consciousness, he starts muttering a spell that can curse the entire land. Mud tries to stop Karryshh, but Karryshh doesn't listen. In the end, the master has Karryshh beheaded, and the curse is placed on the land. Mud feels bad for losing his friend, but then the master orders Mud to break the curse. Hearing this, Mud gets angry, and with a single strike, he kills the master and all his men, because Mud loved the land, not the master, and since he was actually Karrysh's disciple, he knew how to use dark magic. But then properly buries his friend and takes control of the land. Since the land was cursed, Mud places talismans all around the house to keep the curse at bay. He also traps the demon Iblis in a cage and places a curse on the land that would stop Karrysh's curse from spreading. However, Mud's reign doesn't last long, but soon the master's relative come and take over the house, killing Mud in the process. They bring in several shamans who perform other rituals, and they eventually put more counter curses on Mud's curse. This means there are now more than 3 curses of the land, each one keeping the others in check. Zainab finishes telling the story and explains that in the past, she had gone to the house and calmed down the curse, but now the curses are back and have taken control of Mit's mind because he's too weak. Zainab tells them that they need to leave the house because she won't be able to handle all these jinns on her own. Then that night, Heem takes May and Mit near a mosque. Heem goes inside and May shows her dad a sketch her mom made before she passed away. Finally, we learned what happened to May's mom through a flashback. Mitch and his wife were coming home from a date night when their car flipped over and his wife died. Mitch blames himself for the accident, and here's the twist. May isn't Mitch's biological daughter. She's his stepdaughter because Mitch had remarried her mother. Now that night they stay at a hotel near the mosque. May and Mit then decide to go to their old house because that seemed like the only way forward. But when they get there, they find out that the house has been sold and it was sold by Mit's wife's sister. In an instant, all their memories connected to that house fall apart and they're left with no choice but to return to that demonic house. Now the two did go back to their house, but their only goal is to retrieve the ashes of May's mother and leave. But as soon as they step inside, the shrine in the garden shatters. Now May goes up to her room, but suddenly the entry gate locks behind Mit and paranormal things starts happening around him. Mit tries to get his wife's ashes, but they fall and scatter everywhere. Somehow Mit manages to go outside, and when May comes out of her room, she sees her mother's ashes all over the floor, and this completely breaks her down. The demons starts coming after her, but luckily Heem arrives with Zainab just in time. Now inside the house, they can't find Mit anywhere. May goes into the woods to look for her dad, while at the same time Zainab begins her ritual. She starts chanting the mantras to banish the jinns, and that's when he finds Qadir's dagger. Suddenly, the lights go out, and at Zainab's request, he takes her to the shrine. Now, it is revealed here that the purpose of the shrine is to provide a home for wandering spirits, which is why the house's spirits have gathered there. Now, all those spirits were floated around the shrine, and meanwhile, the woods, May finds Mit crying as she comforts him. But then after this, Mit starts seeing evil faces rising from the ground, and his wife appears in front of him. She was only visible to him, and in that moment, Mit has to accept that his wife is gone and she's never coming back. He realizes he has to live for his daughter now, and as soon as he accepts this, his wife vanishes. And this scene was basically showing us that Mit is finally ready to move on. Back at the shrine, Zainab tries to stop the spirits, but they gather together, and out of nowhere, evil Qadir appears, saying his curse will never end. Qadir throws Zainab away, and he pulls out the dagger. He starts chanting a spell, and that's when Qadir transforms into a demon and comes right in front of him, cursing the land over and over again. Him then pulls out a protection charm from his pocket and chants the holy spell directly on the demon's face, and the demon begins to calm down. Whatever that spell was, it made Qadir regain his normal senses. Because of that, Qadir has a vision where he sees his old friend Mud, and thinking about their past, his anger fades away. His soul then goes back to the ground, and it means Heem finally won. Heem then helps Zainab back into her wheelchair, and May and Mit return there as well. After that, he pulls out Qadir's bones from beneath the shrine. You see, Qadir had been buried right there, which is why the dagger was found in the ground. He takes one of Qadir's bone, wraps it in Zainab's holy cloth, and the house's curse finally settles. However, this curse can never be fully broken. It can only be stopped for now. The next day, everything seems back to normal, and the final prayers are being offered inside the house to calm the jinns by other Muslims. After the prayers, everyone has a meal, and Mit is feeling much better, moving on from the past. The house becomes peaceful again, and Mit and May are able to live there in peace. However, after a while, there's some noise coming from the storeroom. That's cause the Iblis demon was still locked inside the cage, and the movie ends right there. So this was the recap video of the movie The Cursed Land, and I hope you have liked this video. And I also want to apologize for my cracking voice because today I am experiencing a bit of cold. If you have liked this video, please subscribe the channel and give the video a thumbs up. I really need your support to grow further. If you want to watch this movie, there's a link to my Telegram channel in the description box. If that link does not work, just go to Telegram and put my channel's name in the search bar and look into my other channel where we discuss about the mysteries of the world. All the links are in the description box. For now, I see you all in the next one. Till then, stay awake, because they always see you.